I'm going to use this as an example of what drew me in versus what kicked me out. The prologue issue, like chapter 1 and 2 of the Pantheon Saga versus how Heroes Unleashed, the how that opened, but specifically how Heroes Fall opened and continued, its focus. So basically, with like I was saying on Twitter, or even on Minds, the Age of Heroes thing. Okay, it opens with Titan, stopping an assault on other kind of like abnormal people that could develop into superheroes if they wanted to, but this was more to make a point that the one guy was pissed that Titan broke through the ceiling to save them, did property damage. You can already tell where this book is going to focus its stuff on. It's just like, oh my god, they're going to add the real world factor of like, yeah, sure, the superhero goes around and saves people, but you're worried about the freaking property damage. Which is the reason why in Uplift Protocol I have special shielding that protects the cities from superhero fights. You know, the cities, since most people grew up around demis, they started developing technology sooner to mitigate, civilian casualties or damage or things like that. They had more of a mindset of how can we protect people and help out the demis protecting us. That's the big difference. So Titan saves them from these robbers, like hostage takers, really, and he makes sure to point out that people assaulting the ones with quirks or superpowers are in the wrong because they're being kind of like worse than X-Men level demonized, and then in turn one guy is upset with Titan, doing the property damage, like you kind of like a 360, like, and then it makes it seem like Titan's tired of his job, he's tired of people, he's a fake aspirational Trojan horse. That's what he is. He's more. This Age of Heroes thing is more of a Watchmen take on superhero work, which automatically gives it a big minus in my book. So you move on from the prologue, and especially when Titan's talking to the Geist stand-in, which is kind of like Rorschach, basically. It's definitely a Rorschach stand-in. And it, like, oh, I gotta kill all the criminals and da da da. Now the narration's fine. Like the actual voice people for the Audible are just fine. They're serviceable. They do their job, and you can tell which character's talking and whatnot. But you get to the closing part of the prologue, and you can tell that Titan doesn't want to be what he is anymore. He's tired of protecting people. Being a superhero has lost its allure. You have more cynical Booster Golds that are popping out of the woodwork to protect people, for fame, fortune, money, that sort of thing. And then when you get to because I mistakenly called it chapter 2 the other day, but no, it's because I forgot, like, the prologue is the prologue, and then there's chapter 1. Well, chapter 1 opens up with the reporter lady and her bestie eating at this goddamn restaurant, and he spends a couple of pages describing the restaurant and the food they're eating and the stupid wine and getting married, and it's like the bestie getting married to the other friend. It's like, I'm not invested in these people, so why should I care if somebody's getting married? Why should I care about this lady's job? Why should I care about this lady's bestie? And eventually the chapter moves on to the opening fight in Salvo with Titan and Lady, I think it's Lady Liberty, fighting these two villains, like the Armadillo something and some electrical guy. And as I'm listening to this while I'm driving, I'm like, holy shit, he should have just had a couple of lines establishing the reporter lady and then have her do her Lois Lane thing and cover the bad guy fight that's like a block or two from the restaurant, because they saw Titan get thrown into a car, eventually. But it was like watching paint dry. You don't have that in a superhero book. Do not have the paint dry. Have the more mundane moments for the hero when we've already established the fantastical of the setting and, a reason to care about the characters. Because people, I look at all sorts of different books, especially when I used to read a lot more, and what would always hook me is little mysteries. open with the overall big conflict, open with the main villain doing something exciting, something, and spend a couple of chapters building up various little mysteries, and then bring in the hero. But then, that's just me. So, you get into the Titan fight with these two supervillains, and he does describe people fairly often, but he also Mr. CC takes a moment to always describe that most of the characters in this whole entire setup are not white. It's like, who cares? I don't care what their skin color is. I mention it very briefly every once in a blue moon in Uplift Protocol, but I don't make a point of it. I rather let people, genuinely, picture the character kind of how you want to. Their beard style, their hair color. I'll give a few basic pointers, and then you guys, you know what? You can go for broke. I might add in some detailed work later, once I'm actually finished with the series, and I'll go back with new eyeballs and new tools and rework some things. But honestly, this guy spent, just like that one review says, he spends an awful lot of time constantly describing the super suits. It's like, I don't need you to describe the super suits every single time they're on screen. I'll get a general that's why I just do a general picture in Uplift, where when I first introduce the character, I'll get a general, this is what the suit kind of looks like. But it's superhero work. Just give the reader a general outlook of what the spandex looks like on the person, and then keep going. Because to me, it feels like you have to constantly, reiterate what should be pretty obvious. It's like, people know that based on Star's demi name, the Star Spangled Banner is there to save them. You can picture a superhero with their supersuit with the same American colors, and then Old Glory on her back. I mention it every once in a while, but I don't constantly mention the whole ensemble. This guy keeps reiterating it. And even going into the 4th chapter, it's just like, oh my goodness. But I'm going to power through that eventually and finish this book just to see what's knocking me out of this story, and it's the mundane manifesto factor. He introduces Hugo, who is a gamma male in high school. It would have been better off to introduce these characters as college students instead, because there's no alpha bitch freshman girl ever. Not least from what I can remember from my high school days. There were a couple of alpha bitch seniors, yes, but never an alpha bitch freshman. And she treats Hugo like an emotional tampon. In public, she treats him like shit. In private, she cries on his shoulder. Oof. Yeah. And you know what, the way they're setting this up, I can already see this. When Hugo gets Titan's powers, he'll probably turn into a chiseled, kind of like alpha body type setup. But his personality is still a gamma, people. And I don't like seeing that in a lot of male characters nowadays, because it is everywhere in a lot of male characters nowadays. I get being an outcast and all that stuff, but you know what? I'm tired of that same train track. Choo-choo, there it goes. It's going away. But yeah, as you get a little bit more about Hugo and his friend, all the races of all the characters are constantly brought up. Milk chocolate skin, all that sort of stuff. And it's just like, okay, Thomas Murphy in Uplift Protocol has Egyptian descent, but it only really pops up maybe twice. You can kind of get the indicator of that because he can wear the braces of Patheon, and he's a direct descendant of that particular group from the Golden City. I haven't basically set up who his ancestor is yet, but I think you can probably guess. It's Patheon himself. But unless it's pertinent to the story, I don't really bring up race. People can, because a lot of the background characters, a lot of the one and dones, they might show up a handful of times. I'll just give a very general description, like the man in the Terran, Alliance suit or whatever. And the only thing I really put on screen about General Whitehouse for the most part is he looks more grizzled than the others because one, he's only first generation Prologue, and two, like what happened to him in his life aged him a little bit. So he's the one that actually looks like the grumpy, like 40-plus-year-old. And even Eliza's grandparents, her grandfather looks older than most because he's also first generation Prologue, and her grandmother, Eleanor Murphy, is second generation Prologue. I did this because I wanted a whole entire series filled with a family of multiple generations working together, but the grandparents could still be physically active in helping to defend people. So I took a page from David Weber's, Harrington series, and it's like, okay, they can actually function longer. Now, the main difference with the Prologue stuff is they will age to their proper, 24, 25 or so, and then the aging process stalls. So everybody will age to their physical majority, and then it slows down. Unlike which initially with what Weber did is the Prologue process made you look like a teenager for much longer than you should have been. He eventually corrected this later, but yeah, I didn't want to be stuck with that. But to continue on, before I get to Heroes Fall, but with the Age of Heroes thing, yeah, Hugo I'm not interested in. I'm barely interested in Titan, but he's gonna die. I can already tell. Because when you open with a character that's so morose about their fucking life, you're like, yeah, they're gonna fucking die. Let's see. And then Reporter Lady, she's like a blip on the radar. He has her acting proactively later in the chapter and actually filming the fight. But it's, what? Honestly, she strikes me as kind of self-serving and like clout chaser. So already this thing is reminding me of our real world in very unpleasant ways that I don't want to even think about, because again, I write to escape. And then you have the one basketball player dude that lights up stuff like a Christmas tree and has some sort of gravity powers, but you don't find this out later until the closing of like chapter 1. In my opinion, Mr. CC bores you with a basketball game, and everybody talking about how awesome superheroes are, and then this is to do the counterpoint with the family drama with this glow guy, with his father who hates superheroes. So you can obviously see it's like, this guy's probably going to turn into a villain at some point out of resentment towards his father being a bigot or something. I guess I'll tell you guys later if it turns out to be that. But, yeah, you get this whole entire family drama where, again, I'm not invested in this guy, his girlfriend, his world. I'm not really invested in this setting so far because it's already going on the path of we're going to try to outdo Marvel with the persecution complex. Admittedly, the only bit of X-Men I really did see was the animated series from the 90s, and of that I only really remember Professor X dating that telepathic alien lady, Jean going nuts, Cyclops constantly screaming for Jean. I do remember Rogue sucking Marvel's powers out of her and knocking her out. I liked Gambit because he was Cajun. It was pretty funny. I don't remember much more than that other than those giant robots, the Sentinels that would constantly try to capture them. But it just showcases like what material I do connect with, what I remember much more. And the personal conflicts in X-Men didn't really engage me. Now, to close out the first part of this Age of Heroes thing, after the one guy goes off in a rage from his family, because his father is the one that really triggers him, the sister and the mom just kind of like, oh, we're so sorry, that sort of thing. But I'm just thinking to myself, it's like, okay, hey, you're this is also another gamma male to me. It's like, speak directly to your father. Women are the ones that generally pussyfoot around a situation because we don't want to create tons of direct conflict. That's the difference. We want to grow and nurture other things, but not create an instant internal conflict or upset within the general family unit. But guys, you expect them to be much more blunt and head on with each other. It's like, bro, just explain what you feel towards your father. Air it out in the open. You don't even have to explain that you are super with like some sort of freaking quirk. So he has like gamma-like tendencies that I just don't find appealing. So they go off and drive off, like, because there's different cities involved. Like the superhero city where Titan's at is like a rip-off of some Californian city somewhere. The something Coast Saint. Because honestly, at this point, I would remember a lot of these things better if I was more engaged with it, to be honest. It's like, oh my god. This will probably be one of the longer videos. So there you go. Okay, so let me get a drink of coffee. I need some coffee. So yeah, he's out in the field after they leave the family's house. They go out in the middle of nowhere so he can release all his tension and all his, gravity powers and light up like a light bulb. And he's like, oh, I feel so much better now, babe. And it's like, okay, whatever. And then I keep going a little bit more into the next chapter where like Hugo is mocking all the the big high school bullies and how he used to be bestest friends with one of the bullies. And then this is the part where later on after school you see where the queen bitch freshman comes to his house and shows her vulnerable side to him. It's like, as a woman, I'm looking at that, it's like, dude, she's using you as an emotional tampon. That's it. She's not interested in you. She might have been your support during your dad's death along with your actual best friend, the Korean guy, which, you know what, I only remember them by their race because that's all he really brings up majority of the time. So Korean guy, Samoan guy, Hugo, and the only reason why I remember Hugo is just because the name stands out a little bit more. And then you got Bree, and the only reason why I remember Bree nickname is because of the Brie Larson crap. So you can already tell I'm connecting all these characters with like a bunch of negative examples. But I pretty much stopped at right about there because it's just like, goddamn, Hugo, stop being a simp. So finally got all that out of the way. So now I'll even just compare and contrast with even what Heroes Unleashed did with the first opening prologue and even the first chapter. Okay, so with Heroes Fall, the opening prologue starts in media res. It's not about heroes moping about who they are. It's actually their version of the Justice League basically falling apart. And it's in a climatic battle. And it's just like, oh, whoa. Sorry about that. It's my allergies again in the morning. But I just want to get more of this off my chest. But no, you get the sense of like, these are supers that have a long history with each other. You could tell by their reactions to each other. And you could tell just how, this is at the depths of their biggest kind of conflict or despair. And it's all in media res. I don't have to understand the concept or the complete history of all these characters, because I'm familiar enough with superhero stuff that, it'll eventually be revealed over time. But the opening to this basically draws you into the setting through the action, through the external drama you see with these characters. Sure, there's some internal drama, but I'm more of an external person. But you get the immediate overall big conflict. You understand some of the stakes almost immediately. Essentially, it would be like if the various titans of the Justice League were just going to town on each other, and at the heart of it all, you kind of find out later, there was like a big instigator to this that basically had everything fall apart. And that's the way you open up Superhero Prose. I'm not going to give too much detail on this because I don't want to spoil people on this book. I don't care about, the other book as much, so that's why I spoiled a bit more with that. But even, New Olympus Saga understood this. But then again, the people that are writing Heroes Unleashed in the various books in that series, and Mr. CJ with New Olympus Saga, understand superheroes and the tropes related to superheroes. Heroes Fall doesn't open up with a mundanity, being tired with life. It's bigger than life. It's actual superhero work. It's bombastic. It's colorful. Yes, it is opening up in a very upsetting way during these superhero careers of these people, but it immediately draws you in rather than kicks you out with a sad sack Titan complaining about protecting people. So, you can tell which book I'm more pissed off at. Yes, Heroes Fall does take some more Marvel cues where they have kind of like some street level stuff, but it also brings in a bigger picture, kind of wider arc almost immediately. And even though the next part cuts to something that you'd think like a Batman type character would stop, it still doesn't diminish the fact that it sets up, actual superhero work rather than the mundanity of life and how boring are these side characters. I mean, maybe the Age of Heroes Pantheon stuff gets better as it goes along, but in this case, Heroes Fall is a good way to hook people into superhero prose, while Age of Heroes is not. I usually give a book 5 chapters to hook me. If it doesn't, I move on. Usually. Now, the only reason why I'm going through a whole lot of superhero prose right now beyond the ones I love is because I want to see what immediately pisses me off versus what, like, okay, I understand what they're going for. So, yeah, I will link the Audible for the first thing below, and then I'll link Silver Empire along with their Amazon links. But if you want something that is more in the old school, superhero vein, any of the Heroes Unleashed books will basically do it for you. I wasn't kidding when I said the main character for Heroes Fall was Jessica Jones, but likable. And guys, the only reference I really have for Jessica Jones is that god-awful show and a few clips I saw of it. So to me, a lot of the characters in Heroes Fall were like, okay, I recognize these archetypes. This is good. So, I guess that's about it for today, everybody. Have a good night, or good evening, or good morning, whichever part of the world you happen to be in.